Thank you, Arena, for inviting me to present today to the women of Ukraine. I also want to acknowledge all of you who are present here today. I just cannot imagine the breadth and depth of what you're enduring. I'm just humbled by the ask, and I only hope I can provide you with tools that you can begin to apply right away, because that is the aim, is that you be able to apply all of these tools that are coming your way today. The phoenix. Why the phoenix? The phoenix is a symbol of rebirth from Egyptian mythology. It is said to be an immortal bird that rises from the ashes. And this proverbial rising of the phoenix is because it represents rebirth, regeneration. It really means harnessing your capacity to turn towards challenge to emerge stronger, smarter, and more resilient. So today you're harnessing that capacity. It takes courage to show up here today. As Nelson Mandela said, I learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. The brave man, he said, and I add woman, is not he or she who does not feel afraid, but he or she who conquers that fear. So resilience is your ability to bounce back from adversity and grow. As researchers say, resilience is more than bouncing back from adversity. People who are resilient keep pursuing their goals in the face of challenges. In that vein, I do believe it is about bouncing up even higher. You capitalize on your downtime and you come out of the adversity as a stronger, better person, ready to take on the world. Now, I'm going to be using a lot of American references as I'm more familiar with them. According to the American Psychological Association, resilience is the process of adapting well in the face of adversity, trauma, or stress. So it refers to acclimating or adjusting to the situation. It is your liminal space. Now, what does liminal mean? Liminal means threshold. It is the space between what was and what is to come. It is the quality of becoming, like a rite of passage or a personal transition. It can be transformative and valuable. And how you hold this liminal space is what builds resilience. So it also means bouncing back from difficult experiences. It is ordinary, not extraordinary. So it's not a gift that just a few elite of us have. It is something that we can learn to develop. It is not a trait that people either have or do not have. It involves behaviors, thoughts, and actions that can be learned and developed in anyone. So that's where we want to take heart and understand that resilience is not something I'm just born with. I am learning to develop it, to grow, to cultivate it, to plant the seeds. Now, when you think about liminal space, you can visualize a smile. The left corner of the upturned smile is where you were till adversity hit. Now you've come down to the lower center. This is where you're learning to be in the space of uncertainty, patiently waiting, trusting. It is your threshold that you're stepping onto and holding yourself with composure, equanimity, hope, and trust. Now that know that you're coming up on the other side of the smile. That is your liminal space. So I want to pause here for just a split second and check in where you think you are in your liminal space. You can reflect on your personal situation, whether it is a personal transition, a philosophical change, obviously a life-altering event, and take a moment to reflect. Make a mental note or write it down if you want to. I'm going to pause here for just barely 30 seconds while you do that, because I think it is important to take stock of where you are today. And there is no judgment. Remember that. It's just where you are today. So uncertainty Fear of the unknown is perhaps the fundamental fear that underlies all our very human anxieties and worries, says Dr. Sarah McKay, who's a neuroscientist in Australia. She says it's like sitting in a rocking chair. Worrying gives you something to do, but gets you nowhere. So obviously none of you here today are sitting in your rocking chairs. You're doing something about your situation, about your life circumstances. In 2019, psychologist Dr. Elizabeth Stanley wrote a book called Widen Your Window, training your body to thrive, your mind, your brain and body to thrive during stress and recover from trauma. The more we can access agency over our own situation, which is like, a sense of control, and rewire our mind and body, the more we can widen this window within our thinking brain, which is in the front, and the survival brain, which is at the base of our brain. They work together cooperatively. By building a resilience in this way, we can train ourselves to make wise decisions, access choice, even during times of incredible stress, uncertainty, and change. The window of tolerance is our capacity to respond to situations with a calm, clear head and confidence. All our vital signs, the body vital signs and systems in the body are at rest. So the first piece that she talks about is neuroception, which is the ability of the neural circuits in the brain, the connections, the synapses in the brain, to intercept, to detect if a situation is safe or threatening. So this is very important that we trust, we know how to look out for danger. There is neuroception going on. The survival brain is constantly checking to see if there is danger both inside and outside. When the sympathetic nervous system is energized, either with excitement or fear, our vital signs go up, like our blood pressure, heart rate, perspiration, etc. They all go sky high. So it's important to pay attention to the body and the mind. We want to stay within our window of tolerance, which is the most sustainable thing to do. If you're not tuned in, if you do not pay attention to your symptoms, the brain, what does it do? It amps up the symptoms further by going into high drive and heightening them. So blood pressure, pulse rate, all of that go even higher. It's almost as if, and this is just my interpretation, the brain feels disrespected and unheard and will have a full-blown meltdown or a tantrum. Now you have gone outside the window of tolerance. So recognize that. If you have to recover from an aroused state, you have to be within your window of tolerance. Recovery functions only when it feels safe. So returning to the window of tolerance, you move from dysregulation. Obviously, you're all hyped up, to regulation. Emotional dysregulation is the inability to control your emotional, mental, and behavioral responses to provocative or challenging stimuli. You all are aware of, how the stimuli can get completely out of hand. You are bombarded with so much. It's very easy to go into emotional dysregulation. So what is important is to recognize that if your emotions are very intense, then perhaps the situation calls for you to widen your window of tolerance. So I'm going to invite you to do a little exercise with me right now, if everybody's ready. Okay, just hold your hands out. This is going to be an exercise with your hands and with your breath. So just hold your hands out about 6 to 8 inches apart in front of you. And this is an exercise that David Trillevine, who teaches trauma-sensitive mindfulness, talks about creating a regulation practice. Okay, so I will count to 4, to which you take a deep breath in and pull your hands out. And then I will count to 4 and you breathe out and bring your hands back in. This is our window that we are just widening slightly and bringing it back in. Okay, so if you want to do it, you can do it with me or just watch me do it. Okay, to the count of 4. Take a deep breath in. Breathe out to the count of 4. Now, let's try breathing breathing in to the count of 6. We're going to widen this window. Breathe out to the count of 8. What do you notice? When you breathe out, the whole body is at rest. So when we breathe in, the sympathetic nervous system is activated. And when we breathe out, the parasympathetic nervous system is activated. It's important not to forget to breathe out, because that is what brings us back to our normal functions inside the body. A relaxed body is a very powerful body. Wider the window, the more powerful emotions are tolerated. Greater the intensity of emotions, both of pleasure and discomfort, and you can manage them. It gives you a sense of agency, being in control. Whatever you attend to, wherever your attention goes, that is what is going to ripple outwards. Instead of the vicious cycle of negativity, we tend to dip down. You create a virtuous cycle of positivity. Your survival brain feels safe and stable. You decompress and regulate. So every time you notice stepping outside of the window, you have the capacity to keep coming back in. Anytime you notice you're unable to do it easily, don't lose heart by saying, oh no, I had a setback, I'm a failure. Instead, tell yourself, it's okay. The system is integrating. It's a process. I'm getting better at it. So that is very important, is to remind yourself that you are learning and you are getting better at it. Kelly McGonigal has a famous TED Talk where she talks about how to make stress your friend. It's rich with research about how to view stress more as a friend and how that impacts the mind, heart, and body. The short 2-minute clip I'm about to play for you is at the end of the talk, and it briefly summarizes her concepts. So here it is.
1,000 adults in the United States, and they ranged in age from 34 to 93. And they started the study by asking how much stress you experienced in the last year. They also asked, how much time have you spent helping out friends, neighbors, people in your community? And then they used public records for the next 5 years to find out who died. Okay, so the bad news first. For every major stressful life experience, like financial difficulties or family crisis, that increased the risk of dying by 30%. But, and I hope you are expecting a but by now, but that wasn't true for everyone. People who spent time caring for others showed absolutely no stress-related increase in dying, 0. Caring created resilience. And so we see once again that the harmful effects of stress on your health are not inevitable. How you think and how you act can transform your experience of stress. When you choose to view your stress response as helpful, you create the biology of courage. And when you choose to connect with others under stress, you can create resilience. Now, I wouldn't necessarily ask for more stressful experiences in my life, but this science has given me a whole new appreciation for stress. Stress gives us access to our hearts. The compassionate heart that finds joy and meaning in connecting with others. And yes, your pounding physical heart working so hard to give you strength and energy. And when you choose to view stress in this way, you're not just getting better at stress, you're actually making a pretty profound statement. You're saying that you can trust yourself to handle life's challenges. And you're remembering that you don't have to face them alone.
So that is a very, very powerful TED Talk that I would highly recommend if you get a chance to view all of it. It's pretty insightful. Now, the chemicals in our brain are activated at different times. When we reward ourselves, the feel-good neurotransmitter called dopamine, you might have heard that word, is released. It gives us a natural high. When we engage in a daily schedule, the mood regulator neurotransmitter serotonin is released that moderates our mood. So it's very important to keep our daily routine ongoing. Whatever it might be a different routine for some of you, but keep a daily routine. When we exercise, hormones called endorphins are released in the body, causing an analgesic effect, acts as a painkiller. When we socialize, the tend and befriend hormone, or as it's very cutely called, the cuddle hormone, oxytocin is released, making us feel love. So just visualize these wonderful chemicals doing a dance inside your brain and in your body as you lean more and more into the healthy behaviors. So that's very important to keep in mind, even when you're going through stressful times, to see if you can generate the dopamine, the serotonin, the endorphins, and the oxytocin when you connect with others. Now I'm going to be talking a little more complicated stuff here, activating motivational circuitry. But if you bear with me, it will be pretty simple for you to understand. So how do you learn and develop resilience? One way is to regulate your brain's motivational machinery so that even during the period of adversity, you are moving towards your goals. The best self-exercise, that is when you visualize yourself in the future, a vision of an ideal condition. And if you work towards it, then that is what really begins to activate your motivational circuitry. We rest in fullness, feeling already good. That is motivating. Now, knowing neurons, which is a neuroscience education platform, gives us some guidelines. Researchers suggest that the human brain can be trained to create the right dopamine environment. One way to do this is by anticipating the reward. For example, visualize the completion of a project and embrace the perceived reward, whether it is self-fulfillment, whether it is the joy you see in others, whatever it might be. Using brain imaging techniques such as MRI, neuroscientists have discovered a neural pathway that creates a connection between the midbrain to the outer regions. So if this is the midbrain, these are the outer regions. They found that the reward information is processed in the prefrontal cortex and that this area interacts directly with the midbrain to trigger motivated behavior. The neurotransmitter dopamine is released in the midbrain. Generating dopamine alone is not enough. Where it travels to, because it can travel anywhere in the brain. If dopamine sends the signal along what's called the mesolimbic pathway, right here in the middle, it reaches the nucleus accumbens, which acts as your personal coach and motivates you to move further towards the anticipated reward. Finally, it reaches the frontal regions of the brain. So thinking positively, we follow this neural pathway over and over again, and we pave a strong path that we can use habitually. That is the marvel of neuroplasticity. And nothing like the absolute excitement of neuroplasticity. We can change our brain, the actual structure inside. That is what is so, so exciting, at least to me it is. So Dr. Barbara Fredrickson, she's a world-renowned researcher, talks about the scientific evidence of the value and power of resilience in her book called Positivity. So that might be another good resource for everyone. She did a study on emotional health. After 9/11, a group of students at University of Michigan who had been given a resiliency scale prior to the crisis was studied for their emotional responses after the national crisis. Those with a highly resilient personality style showed less depression. They were not emotionally indifferent. It's not as if they were closed off to all the negative emotions. They expressed sadness, fear, anger as the rest of the nation. They just did not get stuck, wallow, or linger in it. They expressed compassion for others. They felt more love, hope, awe, curiosity, and gratitude. And they were able to hold both these negative and positive emotions side by side. They were in touch with reality. So this was grounded optimism. Other studies that were done later, including one with older populations, found that the key ingredient of resilience is positivity. The downward spiral of negativity is checked early and the upward trajectory of growth is begun. People who are more positive bounce back from setbacks and shift to an upward progressive path quicker. Then she did a study on heart health. Cardiovascular reactivity, blood pressure, constriction of blood vessels, heart rate, all of these were studied in relation to emotions. When volunteers in the lab were challenged with a stress-inducing situation, such as impromptu public speaking, let's say, their anxiety rose. Blood pressure, heart rates went up, veins constricted. Those who were predisposed to positivity and a hidden reset button, they had a hidden reset button, so to speak. So even though their vital signs spiked, they were the quickest to return to baseline. The cardiovascular effects of negativity were undone. In fact, Kelly McGonigal, whom we just saw earlier, makes the case for when stress is viewed not as being harmful, but as an energizer. The veins remain open and healthy. In a second study, people with different resilient personality styles were also studied in the lab. Higher resilience was directly related to calming of the heart within seconds compared to others with lesser resilience. So the good feelings not only flush out bad feelings, they also quiet your heart and quickly bring your blood pressure back to normal. So this is important to note that your heart health is also affected by resilience, developing resilience. So brain health. A study was done using functional magnetic resonance imaging that measures brain activity by detecting blood flow changes to gauge how resilient personality styles think uniquely in response to bad events. Again, remember, it is the bad events that we are discussing. Visual cues were used, such as gentle threats, and resilience was examined before and after anticipated negativity. There were 3 significant results. There was faster recovery in the activity in the insula, which is a brain area linked to conscious feeling states. Less brain activity in the orbital frontal cortex, the brain area linked to worrying. So there was less brain activity in the worrying area. And thirdly, brain scans show that when people have less worry, there are less neurons firing in the brain. Imagine that. The brain gets quiet and it leads to faster relief. People with highly resilient personality styles are equally moved by actual negativity, but they rebound faster. So it's not like they're unfeeling, they're not cold, they're not, just cordoned off to reality. They stay in reality. Their brain scans proved that. They stay alert to the present moment, respond humanly, but they avoid jumping into, oh no, what if this happens? Going into the future. They stay mindful of the present moment, but they don't linger in there. They are emotionally nimble and they move on. That is what we want to be able to cultivate. And that is something, that's an art, really, to be able to cultivate that. So, as Barbara Fredrickson says, positivity puts the brakes on negativity and equips you to rebound both physically and emotionally. I know for most of you, you're asking, how does one do that when we are still experiencing harsh negative conditions around us? And I do not relate to that. I can empathize with that. And I can say my heart goes out to you. And at the same time, use the science to help yourselves. That is the best gift that I can give everybody, is this gift of positive psychology. Because that's what I want to do. I want to spread it across the world. So community resilience. Now, this is where you all come into the picture. The American Public Health Association has posted a study with the National Institutes of Health that says, building community resilience has become a key component of national policy. Listen to those words, building community resilience. It's not just one individual or two individuals, it's everybody. Most definitions of resilience refer to ideas or concepts derived from physics, such as rebound, bouncing back from distress. The concept of individual resilience has evolved in psychology as a means to understand what adaptive capacities allow some individuals to continue functioning effectively and display positive outcomes in the face of adversity. So resilience is viewed as a process of positive adaptation. A supportive social context in a community prior to an adverse event has emerged as a key component of resilience and provides a bridge between individual resilience and community resilience. So all the connections you have made with one another on different levels, work, family, friends, social, neighborhood, whatever it might be, this networking allows you to weave together community resilience. It is important to note that community resilience is much more than the summation or the addition of individual resiliences. So 2 + 2 doesn't necessarily make 4. It might make 20. That is the power of community resilience. It is the sustained ability of a community to withstand and recover from adversity. It represents a paradigm shift in public health in emphasizing an assessment of community strengths. So today, many of you who are on this call may be leaders who are really spearheading wonderful initiatives, whether it's in the space of social or educational or any other areas. Don't focus only on community vulnerabilities. I understand that that's where you see the need, and so you go there to fill that void. But pay attention to the community strengths and assess them well to use them to build resilience. So that, I think, is an important nugget for you to take with you. Group dynamics. Think about your own personal experience. When or where have you seen a group rise to the occasion in a way that implied resilience? So here again, I'm going to pause where you may take a moment to make a mental note, write it down. whatever you want to do, just pause and reflect for a minute. Now I'm going to go into one segment before we will be taking a break of 15 minutes. So this one is a little bit more involved, so bear with me. Rick Hansen and his son Forrest wrote a book called Resilient: How to Grow an Unshakable Core of Calm, Strength, and Happiness. This was written in 2018. He says, with neurons firing 5 to 50 times a second, which is unbelievable, you can build resilience and well-being several times a day. It is called working the brain muscle. And he describes 4 ways to meet our needs of well-being. The first one is called recognizing. So you have to lay a strong mental foundation to build a sturdy structure to withstand the jolts of life. And so what we are doing is essentially laying the bricks of resilience one on top of the other. Under recognizing, he talks about compassion. Consideration for others comes easier than compassion towards oneself. Do we not all know this? Self-criticism tears us down. Self-respect builds us up. So accept yourself, faults and all, and then send compassion your way. It's not the same as being complacent. It's not just, a fleeting flash of self-love. It's not conceit. Compassion is something that is natural, warm, and calming. It is reinforced throughout the day. It is your core truth. You tell yourself, I am worthy. Becoming a better friend to yourself brings out your best. So commit to your own well-being. It is the first brick of resilience. This is not easy, especially from what I've seen in my work of the last 3 decades and more, is that women have a harder time with self-compassion. And it's very important to teach ourselves to be self-compassionate. I just flew back from India, and of course on the plane, whenever the instructions are, in the case of low pressure, the oxygen masks will drop down. And what do they say? Put it on yourself first before you put it on maybe a child who's traveling with you, a minor, or somebody else who needs help. And your first instinct is, oh my goodness, I'm going to put it on them first. No, you need the oxygen to breathe properly, to make good decisions. Therefore, put it on yourself first. That is the instruction they give us, and it makes sense. The next piece is mindfulness. Staying in the present moment is shown to lower stress, protect health, and lift mood. What you pay attention to changes those connections in the brain, the neural connections. A quick cursory glance brushes aside a transient experience, like, oh, okay, this is what just happened. My child came home with, a beautiful report card that gave her a straight A. But what you want to do is regulate your attention to the present moment without judgment. Be open, receptive, without running to the past or running to the future. Be in the here and now. Then identify your needs and wants. Rest your mind on your inner resources to meet those needs. If you react mindlessly, it generates fear, hurt, rejection. If you respond mindfully, it promotes peace, contentment, and love. The responsive mode is our home base. This is yet another building block of resilience. And then the third piece he talks about is learning. 1/3 of our attributes are innate. 2/3 are acquired through learning. Your inner strengths can be developed through learning. First, you identify your strengths, then you activate them, and then you install them. Let them become a habit. Over time, passing states become lasting traits. It causes neurons to fire in synchrony, leading to new neural connections in the brain. Your thoughts, your beliefs, your emotions, desires, actions are the 5 elements of an experience. So if I were to use, let's say, the example of the recent pandemic, what is my thought? I think people are disregarding the science behind the pandemic, okay? What's my belief? I believe the world is doomed to a prolonged period of suffering, okay? What's my emotion? I feel helpless and angry. What's my desire? I want people to cooperate and be united as we are in this together. What's my action? I will volunteer to educate, to motivate, and to support others to be safe. So you see how we can move with our thought, belief, emotion to the desire and the action and begin to problem solve. This neuroplasticity that is dependent on experience makes me self-reliant. I can rely on myself. How beautiful is that? The next one is resourcing. He talks about gathering our resources, and he talks about 3 major resources. The first one is grit. And what is grit? Angela Duckworth, who has done a lot of research on grit, describes it as grit is passion and perseverance for very long-term goals. Okay, so this involves 4 qualities. One is personal agency. That is your ability to act and make conscious choices. The world may act upon you, but you can choose how you respond to it. Viktor Frankl said about his experience in the Holocaust, the last of the human freedoms is to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. That is a very powerful piece that he has given us. The second quality is resolve, which is a steadfastness to keep your eye on your goal, almost with a feral intensity, fiercely committed, strong, and tenacious, as Hansen says. The third is patience, your tolerance of distressful situations. And the fourth is persistence, sustained effort to solve problems and reach your goal. This is a critical strength to develop within you. So think about it, grit. How are you developing your grit? The second one is gratitude. Why is gratitude important? Positive emotions have many benefits. They support physical health by strengthening our immune system and protecting our cardiovascular system. Excuse me, they widen, science has proven that, I won't get into the studies, but they widen the perceptual field and help us see the bigger picture. Literally, our peripheral vision physically gets wider. The gift of gratitude is immediate gratification. You feel good right away. Giving thanks is being happy for others. Robert Emmons studied its benefits, optimism, happiness, self-worth, and it enhances resilience. It also retains clarity without clouding judgment. I like that. So we have clarity of thought. Practice gratitude by keeping a daily journal, writing down 3 things or people that you're grateful for. And every day, it needs to be slightly different things or different people you're grateful for, not the same ones over and over again. Recognizing others for their fortune heightens compassion for them and creates stronger bonds and connections. So Hansen recommends keeping a pleasure diary also, along with a gratitude diary. Simple pleasures can be deepened to reduce stress. It is self-love, not self-indulgence. It goes beyond just the hedonistic pleasure of, okay, I'm going to go eat an ice cream cone. It isn't that. It isn't about that hedonism. It goes to pure joy, altruism, where you're doing something for another person, and it speaks to meaning, What meaning do I have in my life? Satisfaction in the success of reaching one's goals is inherent within us. Noting your successes, whether they're big or small, celebrating and consolidating them propels you towards even higher goals. Both you and others feel good. So it's a win-win. Notice when you give thanks, how you get a warm feeling wash all over you. I call that, I mean, that's just my phrase. I call it the boomerang effect. It comes back to make me feel good also. And the third piece that he talks about resourcing is confidence. That's an interesting one that he has also studied. As he says, every child naturally asks again and again, do you see me? Do you care about me? Will you treat me well? Secure attachment within a child fosters confidence and connection. So he or she has self-worth and therefore is responsive and not reactive. Learning and growing from loving connections is because of the wonder of neuroplasticity. To nurture confidence, the 5 elements of caring are needed. Being included, being seen, appreciated, liked, and loved. Notice moments in the day when you experience these for yourself. Creating a safe space of caring for others by being dependable deepens their trust in you and increases your own self-confidence. Now, I don't know how many of you have a negative voice in your heads that speaks to you, that kind of puts you down. And that is the inner critic, the negative, the voice of negativity that criticizes us. The harsh doubts, discouragement, minimizing, all of this can be overwritten by setting aside, distancing the inner critic and inviting your inner guide, the voice of positivity. So it can be overwritten with warm optimism, with encouragement and validation. Amplify the inner guide, the inner mentor, consolidate those messages, integrate them, own them. By strengthening them, they get hardwired in the brain. And I start to truly believe in my head, I am basically a good person. My intentions are good. These steps are affirming and self-empowering. So practice gathering your inner resources. There's a lot of work that can be done around the inner critic and the inner guide, but that's a separate, ball of wax altogether. Now, let's look at number 3. He talks about regulating. And by regulating, he's talking about first, building calm. Managing your own emotional state is the first step. When you're aroused or anxious, obviously we've talked about this, the sympathetic nervous system is in overdrive. This is useful in an emergency. Like if I'm about to drive through an intersection and I see an oncoming car, it is important that I brace myself for that. And so this is useful in an emergency, but it is harmful in day-to-day life. It spikes my vital signs up, blood pressure, heart rate, and so on. It releases the stress hormone cortisol. When you're calm and at peace, your parasympathetic nervous system maintains the same vital signs in balance. So it's important for you to create a calm baseline for yourself. After a stressful event, all this will spike up, but you will return to your normal state fairly quickly. Practice mindfulness, being in the moment. Progressive relaxation, Tai Chi, yoga, Qigong, and daily repetitive activities such as, cooking, gardening. It regulates your breathing. Breathing in activates the sympathetic nervous system. Breathing out engages the parasympathetic nervous system, returning you to rest. Active visualization, guided meditation audios are also powerful tools. So just think about various ways that you can bring yourself to calm. Next, you want to regulate motivation. People who are resilient keep pursuing their goals in the face of challenges. Yeah, easier said than done. I can understand that. But it regulates your brain's motivational machinery. What you want to do is what Hansen says, to practice liking without wanting. Wanting comes from compulsions, insistence. I have to do this. I should do this. I must do this. That can become harmful. When you enjoy something without desire, you learn to be content. So stay in the present moment without darting into the future, craving more gratification. The current experience is appreciated fully and is enough. Healthy passion is being engaged in an activity, leading a meeting at work, hosting friends for dinner that excites you. Positive emotions arise such as hope, eagerness, joy. Your parasympathetic nervous system keeps you naturally at ease. When the same activity is filled with negative emotions, whether you're leading a meeting at work or whether you're hosting friends for dinner and you're feeling anxious and frustration or anger, it stresses you and your sympathetic nervous system ramps up the vital signs. Instead, focus on your character strengths. What are some of the strengths I can bring to the occasion? I have good social intelligence. I'm a warm, loving person. I know how to relate to others. I have good leadership skills. I know how to lead a team. Will I make mistakes? Sure. Is that okay? Yes. So it is important to stimulate positive emotions about that very activity. Motivating yourself to reach big or small goals takes work. So there is that, we talked about the motivational circuitry in the brain that increases dopamine, and that's what you want to continue to practice activating. Now, for example, let's say going to the gym because it will make you feel good may not be good enough. That's not enough motivation. You know it in your head, yeah, it's good for me, for my body, but it's not enough. So choose something fun, like maybe, do I want to join an aerobics class instead of running on the treadmill by myself? So I will be with other people. Do I want to wear brighter workout clothes that liven my spirit? Choose activities that are more stimulating. Add new routines. Vary the details. Take many, many short breaks, and then ask others for feedback. Imagine a feel-good moment in the future. Your brain experiences dopamine release already in the present moment, even though that future moment hasn't happened yet. After you have completed the activity, anchor the actual feel-good moment by noticing details about it in your body's response. How do I feel in my head? How is my breath coming and going? How is my heart? How is my stomach? It's at ease. One thing I notice is my ears are not burning, like they just calm down. People say my shoulders droop back, my hands are relaxed. And so notice this, my legs are sitting comfortably. My feet are firmly on the ground. It feels good. This is downloaded in memory for easy access later. You are in charge. So remember that about cultivating and regulating your motivation. And the next piece he talks about, which is interesting, he says we want to regulate intimacy. Man is a social animal, so you want to create connections with others. At the same time, manage those relationships in a responsible way. Establish healthy boundaries. Again, I have known women have a harder time establishing healthy boundaries. Be assertive. Know that you matter in a relationship. Retain your autonomy, independence while entering into a relationship. Make requests. not demands or complaints. As Hansen says, a strong me in the midst of we fosters intimacy. So you want to bring a strong me into that we relationship. A quick scientific fact here, the vagus nerve, which is the 10th cranial nerve in the brain, and that carries the parasympathetic nerve fibers, it also goes all the way down to the gut, is awakened when paying attention to others. The vagal tone index is central in social engagement. People with a higher vagal tone index deal with bad emotions better and have healthier social connections. When you recognize that other people matter, you develop empathy for them. So strengthen compassion and kindness towards others. Reach out. Developing resilience means working with your brain to regulate your emotions, motivation, and relationships. You will find it easier to bounce back from the setbacks of life. So relating is number 4. And the first piece he talks about is courage. Interpersonal courage. Speak from the heart with self-respect and skill. You have to both feel and be safe while communicating. Ask yourself, which of these do you engage in more? Do you share experiences, your personal thoughts and feelings more? Or do you tend to be the problem solver, impersonal, objective views? Your truth for its own sake, or persuasion and influence? Recognize which style you're more comfortable with or which you tend to avoid or shy away from. The first approach, dealing with process, is a joint approach. I'm in this with you. The second approach, dealing with outcome, is a more detached one. Both have merits. Courage would require you to face your fear of being either emotionally vulnerable on the one hand, sharing your experiences, or being proven wrong while you're problem solving. So healthy communication creates elasticity, and you can move back and forth through both of those. He then talks about aspiration. Many of us have had dreams as a child that remained unfulfilled. Doubts hold us back from realizing them. According to Hansen, people frequently get caught up in the means. This distracts them from the end itself and often keeps it out of reach. So he urges us to look for the essence of our dream. And let me give you an example. Let's say you've had a recurring dream of riding a wild horse through an open field. Again and again, you would dream of this. It doesn't mean necessarily that you have to get horseback riding lessons to fulfill that dream. The actual significance of the dream might be totally different. It might actually represent your thirst for freedom from the demands of daily life or work. So if liberty from others' expectations is the essence, then look for ways to pursue that freedom. Commit to an action that will free you up. Now that action can be something such as, I'm going to get trained to run a marathon, or I am going to start volunteering at the nearest shelter. It meets your desire for autonomy to do what you feel passionate about. So Hansen talks about love, work, and play. These are the 3 areas of life that our dreams fall under. And he invites us to find our sweet spot at the intersection of the 3 circles: what you enjoy, what you're talented at, and what you care about. So when your likes, talents, and values all converge, your aspirations will be realized more readily. State clearly to others what you wish to pursue and why. This also becomes hard, to speak up. Use the growth mindset to aim high and not be attached to results. Do it anyway. The more you're willing to fail, the more you're likely to succeed. So surrender to the dream. Say yes to it. Honoring yourself makes you more flexible to bounce back. And the last piece here he talks about is generosity. Giving of your time, attention, money, talents to others is a way to be generous in your daily life. Look for opportunities to give to people or situations. Now, generosity can be draining and deplete you of your energy and resources. I often say, if you keep giving, you're going to go bankrupt. You want to make deposits in your own emotional bank. So making deposits in your own emotional bank is to bring calm, composure to compassion. When drawn into empathy for another person, it is easy to drown in the other's distress. We get pulled in, sucked in. So step back, stay centered in your core, and anchor yourself firmly on solid ground before you extend a helping hand. Self-care is critical. When working with my clients, I often tell them, if you see a drowning person, what's your instinct? What are you going to do? If your first response is, I'm going to jump into the water to save that person, just be aware that person is panicking and can suddenly pull you under with them. So what is more important? Stay on the shore, throw a long rope or a branch or a stick or anything else to that person so you can reel them back onto the shore. If you have to get into the water, then learn how to do the side stroke and then hold the person around the waist and then pull them back to shore so that they cannot get their arms around your neck and pull you under. Self-care is critical. Forgiveness is another form of generosity. In relationships, when you're wronged, examine whether you wish to, A, continue to hold a grudge. And this is like resentment. Resentment comes from the French word ressentiment, which is like to feel again and again. So it's like a slow release poison that will hurt you despite its initial reward of, okay, I have the right to be angry at this person, righteous indignation. But it does no one any good. So what's the second option? You can offer disentangled forgiveness, which means I'm going to distance myself from the person, seek compensation if need be, but I'm going to let go of any hard feelings and negative thoughts. You choose the distance that you wish to maintain. You take action, you're detached and at peace. What's the third option? You offer a full pardon. That is looking at the other person as a whole person, absolving him or her of any wrongs and starting off on a clean slate. You let go of the past, fully trusting both yourself and the other. This happens only when you know the other person can be trusted. You can follow the same principles for forgiving yourself. This is the trickiest to do. Take responsibility for your action, feel appropriate remorse, make amends, and ask for forgiveness from yourself. That is humbling and very freeing. So finally, Hansen calls on us to extend a circle of us, people like us, to include them, people unlike us. When we look for similarities, we begin to realize that we are all in this life together. This is what builds a resilient society. I'm going to be talking about the explanatory style theory. Martin Seligman is a psychologist who has come up with this theory that addresses our habitual and reflexive ways of explaining why good or bad things happen to us. The way we see the world, he says there are three perspectives. One is personalization, believing that the problem is of our doing. I caused it to happen. I'm at fault. Another one is permanence, convincing yourself that a bad situation is going to last forever. And the third one is pervasiveness, believing that the bad situation applies to all aspects of your life instead of just to one area. So what he advises us to do is to change our perspective. Think of a difficult experience that you're having right now and change the perspective from being personal to impersonal. Change the dimension from being internal to external. Change your explanation from telling yourself it's about me to, no, it's about the circumstance, the situation, or maybe it's about other people. Now think about the perspective, changing the perspective from being permanent to impermanent. So the dimension changes from being stable to unstable. Explanation changes from this is going to last forever to it's only fleeting and temporary. And the third piece, change your perspective from being pervasive to specific. So the dimension becomes, you change it from being global, like this involves everything and everybody else in my life, to being very local. This is specific. So the explanation you give yourself is it's universal. Instead, you say it's specific to the situation. To give you an example, now this may or may not apply to anybody at all, but let's say, just to use it as a general example, let's say someone had to seek refuge in another country. So how are you changing your perspective? Personal perspective might mean I'm a victim. I do not have the strength to stay. I am weak. This is a very personal negative interpretation. Impersonal perspective, no, my circumstances forced me to this decision. I made a conscious choice based on sound judgment. Very important, how you shift that perspective. Permanent perspective. I will never return to my homeland. I'm doomed to be an outsider. What is the impermanent perspective? This is temporary. Till order and safety is restored to my country, I will keep myself safe and immerse myself in activities that are meaningful and fulfilling. Again, the permanent to impermanent perspective. The third one, pervasive. That says, oh, I also failed as a parent. I had to uproot my whole family and put them through this so much trauma. I'm a terrible mother. Specific perspective. This situation is unique. It does not apply to all the other roles I perform in life, whether it be a parent, whether I'm somebody's daughter, whether I'm a friend, whether I'm somebody's sister, employee, so on and so forth. I am learning to adapt in all of these areas because this is a very specific situation. It does not change who I am. My identity doesn't change. So what is important is to look at the facts, take ownership where it belongs, and let go where it does not belong. So it's important to reduce self-blame. You address your inner critic and activate the inner guide. That is important. Now, if the three negative perspectives are constantly present, where you're telling yourself, this is personal, this is permanent, this is pervasive, when they come together and intersect, they can form a toxic cocktail of negative thinking that leads to depression. So stay alert to your thinking patterns, steer away from the negatives and move towards the positives. What happens when you do that? You're creating optimism. It is a tendency to explain bad events as being external. We talked about that. It's not personal, it's out there. It is impersonal. Changeable, it's not permanent, It is temporary. It will change. Local. It's not global. It is specific to the situation. So it's important to remember these dimensions: external, changeable, local. When you think in those terms, you start to develop optimism. Now, what do optimists do differently? First, there are certain cognitive things. The way they think is different. They're better able to identify problems, see situation as a challenge and not a threat. There's a difference in that. Identify what they can control, influence, and leverage. And they accept the aspects that they cannot change. If there are certain things that are my reality and I cannot change that, I want to learn to accept that and move on. Behavioral, approach-oriented. They create strategies to affect change. They walk towards the problem. It's almost like leaning into it. They're leaning towards the challenge. Seek information, ask for help, take action. They use proactive behaviors such as exercising, eating healthy in order to stay optimistic. And what are the emotional characteristics of optimists? Positive emotions, hope, determination, trust, and use a lot of humor. Learn to laugh at yourself. That is very important. So the benefits of optimism, this isn't just about feel good, happyology kind of situation where, you're told that you're kind of upbeat all the time. That's not possible. We talked about that, you recognize when things go wrong and you experience those negative feelings and then bounce back up to the good feelings. The benefits of optimism are stress hardiness. You actually become hardier in managing stress, greater social support, relationship satisfaction, mental and emotional well-being, physical health, low mortality rate, performance at work goes up, academic success, sports success. So these are all the benefits of optimism. As Winston Churchill had said, a pessimist sees the difficulty in every opportunity. An optimist sees the opportunity in every difficulty. And that's a nice way to look at it. So what might be an optimism activity you could engage in? And you could do that right now. Think of a situation that you're struggling with. What aspects or part of that situation can you actually control? Or what parts and aspects can you influence, like make a slight change in it? What aspects do you have no control over? And list purposeful action you will take to make the situation better. So think about that for a minute, or just, sort of make a mental note again of a situation that you're struggling with and how do you engage optimism in that situation. So when you think of the positive perspectives that you tend to adopt habitually, whether it is that you tell yourself this is impersonal, this is temporary, and this is very specific to the situation, do you tend to do that? And if not, can you think of negative perspectives that you tend to use habitually? Like, do you make this my fault? Do you tell yourself? Do you say it's permanent, here to stay? Do you tell yourself this affects all other areas of my life? How would you wish to turn that around? And how would you apply the optimism activity? So let's just take a brief moment. I'm going to pause here just for you to reflect and think about it. So now we are going to dive into more research, and I'm giving you research not to confuse you, but to kind of validate and solidify the same concepts over and over again. Different researchers are coming to the same conclusions, and I want to impress that. So that way you get the sense, okay, you can begin to use these tools. Karen Ravitch, Director of Resilience and Positive Psychology Training Program at University of Pennsylvania, and Andrew Schadt, they've written a book called The Resilience Factor. They talk about 7 psychosocial variables that contribute to resilience. One is self-awareness. What are my thoughts? How often do I hit the pause button? What are my emotions? How do I track my emotions and broaden my lexicon of desirable emotions? What are my reactions? How are they helpful or harmful? What are the behaviors I engage in? Like a knee-jerk reaction, or am I thinking it through? Is it a response? This serves a protective purpose or in fact causes damage. Physiology, how is my body responding with all the physical symptoms? And then lastly, she talks about knowing your character strengths. There is a very good survey online that is available to everybody free of cost. And you can go to that. It's viacharacter.org, values and action, VIA character.org. It is a wonderful survey that will tell you what your character strengths are, what are your top 5 character strengths, your middle strengths, your lesser strengths, and how can you begin to engage those lesser strengths going forward. The next thing she talks about is self-regulation, the ability to change your physiology and tell yourself there is no battle, you down-regulate and you set goals. Mental agility. Just to tell yourself there are multiple perspectives, ways to look at the problem. Get to the root of the problem by problem solving. Use your intellectual functioning. Then optimism, she believes, is the engine of resilience. Believe in a positive future. It is an endurance run. Create an attitude to persist. Separate out what you can control and you cannot. Think of the stressors as challenges, lean into them, and not think of them as threats, which causes the tendency to withdraw. So you hear the repetition here. Self-efficacy mastery, which is recognize and hone the I can attitude. I can do this. Connection. Create a strong attachment to other people, your caregivers, your relationships that you know you can rely on. Nurture spirituality, your relationship with your faith, with nature, with a mission, a purpose, whatever that might be for each one of you. That connection is very important. And then positive institutions. She talks about family, community, workplace, both interpersonal and intrapersonal connections. So Ravitch also gives us these thinking traps, which are rigid patterns of thinking that undercut our effectiveness. They get in the way of mental agility. She describes 5 thinking traps. One is the mind reading trap. I know a lot of people, we tend to do that. You know, you don't ask for information and presume you know what the other person is thinking. I know 100% what's going on in the other person's mind, and you really don't. So it blocks communication, and the result is you become defensive. So there's a defensive posturing that happens. The second is the me trap. You believe you are the sole cause of every setback or problem. It is the explanatory style of personalization that we talked about. What is the result? Self-blame and guilt. The third is them trap. You believe that other people or circumstances cause problems all of the time, which is obviously the other extreme. You overly experience the emotion of anger believing your rights are being violated consistently. Result, excessive anger. You're constantly on this treadmill of anger. Next is catastrophizing. You ruminate over worst case outcomes. There is an imbalance between your assessment of threat and the actual threat. The result is anxiety and agitation. It's very non-productive. And the fifth is the helplessness trap. You believe negative event is going to impact all the areas of your life. It is global, it is stable, and the result is demotivation, withdrawal, and passivity. So you want to avoid these mind traps and develop certain strategies to counter the mind traps. These she calls are real-time resilience strategies, almost like doing mental judo. Using actual applications, we create an arsenal of strategies to use when the counterproductive thinking traps show up. What is strategy 1? Evidence. Use vivid data to prove, is this true or not what you're thinking? Where is the evidence? And we'll talk about examples soon. Strategy 2, reframe. Start your sentence with a better way to see this is, and complete it. Strategy 3, plan. If X happens, I will do Y. If you have a contingency plan, you can go into the situation more relaxed instead of having your guard up. So let's examine counter responses using any one of the 3 strategies to each of the thinking traps. This is just a quick example. Again, forgive me if I'm out of line. I'm simply using this as an example. The decision to leave your country and seek refuge. Mind reading trap says, oh, I bet you my husband blames me for this displacement. You get into this defensive mode. How will you reframe? A better way to see this is that we are in this together. It was not my sole decision. We talked it through. He had voiced his doubts, but we both decided this was a better option. Me trap. I'm the only one making big decisions, but I'm always at fault. What's wrong with me? I feel guilty. How do you reframe? A better way to see this is someone has to take a bold stand. It's not an easy responsibility. I will own responsibility for the mistakes I make. I release what does not belong to me. Them trap. My husband tends to only focus on what are the challenges and the hurdles, but does not find solutions. He projects onto me what is generally his root problem. Result, anger. Reframe. He's doing the best he can under these unnatural circumstances. No one has a script to follow. We are all under a lot of acute stress. Catastrophizing trap. Oh no, this means that A, I don't know if I'm ever going back to my country. B, I think it's going to lead to many days of the silent treatment from him. Again, evidence. This is not true. He is quiet because he too is grieving having to leave our home. The last couple of times we had a disagreement, the distance between us did not last for long. And now the helplessness trap. It doesn't matter what I do. My husband responds this way over and over again. It's not going to change. Resignation, victimization. Maybe you can use a plan. If he does react out of his habit, then I will move out of my victim role or rescuer role and step into my assertive role. I will respond with gentleness and firmness. So you see how you can begin to use these strategies to flip those thinking traps around. You're building an arsenal of real-time resilience skills and preparing ahead of time. The next slide is going to be showing you what confirms what everything, when everything is pooled together, all the research. The 10 guidelines for cultivating resilience according to the American Psychological Association, and I will just kind of breeze through those. One is connection, perception, how you see situations, acceptance, change is a part of living, goal setting. Now, goal setting includes the SMART goals: specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, time-oriented. So you want the SMART goals that you want to set for yourself. Action, making a plan and taking decisive actions on the situation. Discovery, look for opportunities for self-growth. Development, improve your self-concept. Trust your instincts, grow your self-confidence. Perspective, step back, take a long, broad, bigger look. Hope, generate hope, maintain an optimistic outlook, visualize what you want in the future. Above all, self-care. Increase overall health of your mind and body through food, exercise, meditation, and journaling. I'm sure you have all heard of Viktor Frankl and his book, Man's Search for Meaning, because he is a very famous Austrian neurologist and psychiatrist who wrote the book in 1946, wherein he describes his experiences as an Auschwitz concentration camp inmate during World War II. It's a poignant, very moving tale of a story. More importantly, it is the meaning he ascribed to those experiences that are deeply moving. In there, he talks about this example of butterflies carved on wooden posts by the inmates of the camp. They were symbols of freedom to come. They represented hope. And he discusses 3 sources of meaning: purposeful work, love, and courage. He developed a method which involved identifying a purpose in life, to feel positively about it, and then imagine the outcome. He also has given us this very useful tool. Between stimulus, when something happens or an event takes place, and our response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. So always remember, when something happens, if you have a quick reaction, you want to pause, step back and ask yourself, how do I want to respond instead of reacting to the situation? That's very important in being able to recognize that I too can get through a very horrific time in my life. Gail Wagnall at the Resilience Center in Montana has done research on the topic for the last 3 decades. She in fact came up with the first brief resilience scale. She talks about focusing on your sense of purpose. And here she says, instead of looking for your purpose, she proposes, discover how your purpose is finding you. So it's not like you are going out there and looking for meaning in your life. Ask yourself, how is meaning finding me? So while we are impatiently going from one thing to another in search of meaning, it's usually in front of us. We may only see it dimly or just catch glimpses from time to time, but it's there. The questions she likes to ask are these. What do I do that is deeply satisfying? Like, do I ever get lost in it, lose track of time? Am I ever in a state of flow? What comes easily to me? What are my God-given abilities? Who needs me? Where can I contribute? When I'm able to answer these questions and visualize the intersection of interests, abilities, and needs, how and where I'm needed, then I will see more clearly the many ways that purpose is calling me. As I said earlier, she's developed the first brief resilience scale to assess the strength of your resilience score. This is necessary to reduce the effects of anxiety, depression, stress, and it leads to a satisfying life. Maria Sirua is a psychologist at the Whole Being Institute. She says, resilience, you see, isn't just about recovering from difficult moments or even growing through trauma or tragedy or loss. It is also our capacity to say yes to life, yes to work, yes to love, yes to adventure, yes to connections, and yes to growing within ourselves. Build that sense of inner efficacy and esteem and wisdom that enables us to choose when and how to actually say yes to life. She's another excellent presenter. I have learned a lot from her. Resilience and Stress, Stress and Resilience Institute, Paula Davis Lack, who is the founder of this institute, lists 7 things that resilient employees do differently. So if some of you are in a situation where you are overseeing, leading large organizations, or, you know, even if it's volunteers, whatever it might be, look for these traits to develop in the group. So that way it can lead to more resilient organizations also. Number 1, connections. Develop high quality relationships at work. What does that involve? Effective listening, engaging, guidance, recognition, support to help the other person succeed, building trust, letting others follow through, playing, creating, and innovating. Very important to play as a team. Number 2, self-care. Watch out for that slow drip of loss of energy or enthusiasm and self-confidence due to stress. Invest in self-care. Recharge on a daily basis. Number 3, authenticity. Be your true self, not who you think others want you to be. If you try to be perfect or fit a mold, so to speak, in, you know, a box, you will be exhausted and lose self-respect. It takes less effort to be yourself, and you will like yourself more. Grit. Find your passion and persevere on your long-term goals despite hurdles. Meaning, know your purpose at work and what brings value to what you do. That's a very important piece. Why are you doing what you are doing? Know the why, not just how you do it. This is important, especially during low times. You know, like, for example, to give you a quick example, an auto car or a car company, it's not important for us to know that they make cars. That's the what they do. The inner piece, what is their why? To connect people from point A to point B safely. How do they do it? Maybe using the latest artificial intelligence. What do? They build cars. So you begin to see the what is not as important as the how, but the most important is the why. Why are you doing what you are doing? So stay connected with that at all times. Flexibility. When things don't go your way, pause, notice your reactions, identify what you have control or influence over, and how you can adapt to change. And the last is engagement. Anticipate and manage risks. Stay involved during times of stress. I forgot to pull these up as I was talking. I apologize. So connection, self-care, authenticity, grit, meaning, and flexibility and engagement. These are important. Now, I just recently read this book. You might have read it. Melinda Gates is a philanthropist, businesswoman, and global advocate for women and girls. No matter what the original focus, she says, when women get information, tools, funding, and a sense of our power, women lift off and take the group where they want to go. So if you want to lift humanity, she says, empower women. It is the most comprehensive, pervasive, high leverage investment you can make in human beings. Imagine that. And so this is much of the work that most of you are doing. This is just amazing. And so just know that the phoenix within you is rising today, even as you set your sights on after tomorrow. I don't know if that's the right interpretation of this organization, but that's what somewhere I read on your website, that it means after tomorrow. So with resilience, your ability to bounce back even higher than before is magnified greatly. You come out of adversity faster and with greater zest. Now remember, zest is bringing your whole heart into the moment. And that is what you're doing as you're sitting here today. So on that note, I would like to thank you all for having me here today. It's truly been my honor and privilege to bring some important work to you. I wish you the very best in life. And I just wanted to end with this note. Currently in India, Diwali, the festival of lights, is being celebrated, signifying triumph of good over evil. And I would like to spread that goodwill to everybody. Be well and stay safe. So thank you.